All right, our latest big conversation with the ODP Girls National Championship coming up this weekend, talking with Girls Academy Director Ethan Damato. Coach, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg.
Busy week for you. The culmination of the program. We had Jack Coker on a couple weeks ago to talk about the boys. Give us a little preview here. What are we excited about looking ahead to this weekend in the Tri-Valley?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's the culminating event for our ODP season, and it's kind of been a long journey for a lot of these teams and athletes. We've got 58 teams, so the biggest number of teams at cadet and development that we've ever had, which is awesome. Around 800 athletes traveling to the Tri-Valley area this weekend. Around 70 zone coaches, and then about 15 of our national team staff and pipeline coaches that'll be there. Great opportunity for some professional development for our zone coaches. And obviously a lot of great water polo coming up over the weekend.
When you talk about the expansion and, as big as it's ever been and more teams, more athletes, what's kind of the engine driving that growth at an event like this and within the program?
Yeah, I think that's something that we're trying to get better and bigger and evolve with each year that I've been a part of the ODP program. I've been lucky enough to be a part of the program actually since like 2010. So I've been in it from as a zone assistant coach to a zone head coach to pipeline assistant coach and to where I'm at now. So I've been lucky enough to be a part of it and be a part of the growth. And I would say that we're trying to learn and get better and grow every year. And if there's things that we can do better after the end of this year, we'll be talking about it and looking to grow the sport and grow these events as best that we can.
And then we talked a bit about the boys. For the girls, similar journey, this kind of camp process in the fall, bubbling up depending on where they live, to that evaluation event if you're in California, the regionals if you're outside the state of California, and now being chosen here to take part in national championships. And then after that, right, for some moving on to an NTSC, how hard is that piece for you and the coaches to decide? There's so much talent there this weekend, 800 athletes.
Yep.
To decide who gets to go forward, it has to be one of the most brutal things you have to do.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I think we've got a great staff that'll be up there this weekend. Our three head coaches, Sabrina Carlisle, who's leading the development team, Brenda Villa, who's leading the cadet team, and Elise Moore. They'll all be up there as well as their assistants. We're going to lean on our zone coaches as well, but there's a lot of conversations that'll be had throughout the weekend with the zone head coaches, with our national team staff, conversations that'll go on past the event. But Jack talked about this a little bit, and it's not just about this weekend. I think something that has been great for us is that with the additions of these regional events, it just gives us another touch point and an opportunity to watch these kids and our zone head and our national team staff to be able to evaluate them. So when we're seeing them this weekend, it's not the first time that we're seeing them. On top of that, we're, especially in my seat, we're watching year round. We're watching high school, we're watching club, we're watching these ODP events. And, as we get going through this process, we really get to know these kids really well. I think that's one of the coolest things that I've felt in this role as Academy Director, is just the ability to really know our athletes as they grow through this process. So, to answer your question, it's a very difficult one, and it's going to be something that's very challenging for us. But it's not something that just happens over this weekend. There may be some things that we don't get right this year. But in my experience, as we go through this process, the more that we see these kids and the ones who keep coming back and keep improving, eventually, they find a way onto one of these rosters and into one of these national team selection camps. So it'll be a big challenge this weekend, but again, it's something that we've been watching throughout the course of this year, and we'll put a lot of thought and effort into.
Growth, such a talking point when you think about the ODP program and how someone can level up from one year to the next. Yeah. Just take the journey of the kid that started back in September with their zone camp to where someone might be this weekend. What sort of improvement, skill development, growth have you seen or can an athlete go through in that chunk of time?
Yeah, a lot. And I think some of that depends on where they are in their own process as well, and what they have. we just got done with high school season here in Southern California, and we had the California regional event, and it was great to be able to watch some of the growth from our young athletes that they had over their first high school season, even. And so the growth that will happen between September for let's say a 14 or a 15-year-old player who's just kind of scratching the surface of where they're at in the long term. The growth in a 6-month span or a 7-month span, and a lot of times can be a lot of growth, and we saw it firsthand, and it was really cool, as I said, to see that at both the regional event and the California event, both just from this fall to where we were at the start of March. And then a lot of cases where we saw them at the end of last summer to where they are this summer, and we get to be a part of that growth, and that's a lot of fun.
You mentioned being a part of this whole thing since back in 2010. If you look back over the 16 years, and I asked Jack an identical question, but how have the opportunities expanded for athletes across the country in this program?
Yeah, I mean it's crazy when we think about the growth of where we are in water polo, and just even something like Junior Olympics growing to as big as it is right now, to ODP championships. We didn't have anything like this when I first started. I think each region kind of played in there. I think my first year as the SOPAC head coach, we were just playing the SoCal region, and then I think it was the California region that we were playing. And so to expand into ODP national championships, to add the regional super finals that we started, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, to now adding the California regional event. Again, like we're trying to expand, trying to grow, and the opportunities for these kids to be seen and to get exposure to the U.S. system of play, and our coaching staff, I think has grown a ton over that time.
So for any athletes that are watching, right, there's 800 athletes that are gearing up to be there this weekend, that are going in probably thinking like, this is my chance, right, to kind of make an impact, show what I can do. What's like the basement, the floor? Like what's the thing that you better do, like something that's within your control as an athlete, right? Like everyone wants to have the great game or to do the saves or the steals or the goals or the field blocks, but
Right.
What's something you'd say to any one of the 800, like, you better bring this weekend, the thing that's in your control?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what's really cool is that, our national team staff will actually speak to every team this weekend at the start of the tournament. And they'll give them some tips and some things that they want them to focus on. All of those conversations will be slightly different. We don't like kind of micromanage what those coaches will be saying, but I think some things that we'll be looking for is like you said, what's something that you can control? You can always control your effort, and your energy, and the way that you act as a teammate. Right. And so I think one of the things that we're watching is, aggressive play. And I think that's going to be something that, I'll talk to our coaches about, is just encouraging everybody out there to be aggressive with the way that they're playing the game. Right. And if we're going to be here, let's make the most out of it. Let's put our best foot forward. And let's go out there and be aggressive. What that looks like, playing aggressively, could look a little different for every position. And at every spot, I think a lot of times we incorporate that with like scoring goals. Well, yeah, we want to watch people score goals. That's a big part of what we're looking for. But also, the effort that you're putting in on the defensive end, the effort that you're putting in to communicate with your teammates, to help move the ball in the front court offense. Your body language. I think that's something that you can control, right? Whether you're up, 15-2, or whether you're down 2-15. Whether it's the third game of the day or the first game of the day, whether you got just scored a goal or you got a tough call, like what is your body language and how do you react in those situations? And I think those are always things that we can control, right? And so those are things that we're looking for, some small things, along with a lot of the other tactical and technical elements that we'll be watching. But you'll if you were there and you could be a fly on the wall, Greg, for some of those conversations with our national team staff, that's what you'll be hearing from a lot of them, as well as have some fun, and enjoy the time while they're there. I think one of the really special parts of this program is the relationships that can be built. You're not playing outside of your high school or your club teams, and you get to be around like-minded players that love the sport and are here to be better. And when you do that, special things can happen, and a lot of relationships can be built. And we'll be encouraging them to lean into those areas as well, and make sure that they're getting everything they can out of the weekend.
This question, I wish I asked Jack and I forgot it, but we're talking about going into this championship weekend. You've coached at so many different levels. What does a supportive parent look like at a weekend like this?
Yeah, lots of sunscreen. It's going to be a hot one there this weekend, especially if you're coming from somewhere where it's not sunny right now. We are in we're end of winter here. It's about 95 degrees here in Southern California. I think it'll be in the 90s. So I'm joking, but just keeping them, showing them some love, and supporting them, and being a great cheerleader. Right. And I think, whether that means making sure they're properly hydrated and fueled throughout the event, not putting too much pressure on them. Right. It's kind of a pressure filled event as it is. Right. Anytime there's selections to be made at the end of this, and coaches evaluating you, and college coaches' presence, there's going to be a form of pressure. And so I don't think they need any extra pressure on top of that. Really just support. They should all be super proud of themselves for having the opportunity to be there this weekend and earn a spot to be there. And as parents, you should be proud parents that your kids are there and get a chance to compete in this awesome event. And lots of love, lots of sunscreen, lots of fuel, and keep them fed and hydrated and happy when they can.
One of the just basic functionalities of this whole process, right, is to eventually pick a national team at these three different levels, and training and eventually competition. We've talked about this before. That is the experience for essentially a small percentage of who will go through this program. For many, that's not how they'll benefit from all of this. I'm curious, if you put the national team piece aside, and you've coached elite high school, elite club, how have you seen a program like this take that young woman who maybe wasn't in your starting seven at high school or was not hearing from the colleges? How did that change their trajectory for that next level they were aspiring to that had nothing to do with Team USA?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that I like to talk about if I were to travel to a camp or even to my own high school or club athletes is like, this is just an extra opportunity to get better. It's an opportunity to play with the best in your area, to play with different coaches, to learn more about water polo, right? To learn more about the U.S. system of play. If you've watched our women's national team, I think we've done a couple things right in the way that we're playing the game over the years, and that is our ODP system, right? So getting a chance to learn that U.S. system of play, getting a chance to be around, as I talked about, like-minded people, and it's an opportunity for growth. And I think that there's something to be said about people that want to improve. And if you're doing an ODP camp, right, you're there on a weekend, you're giving up your Saturday or your Sunday to be better, right? That's a step in the right direction, right? That you're showing that you want to improve and you want to get better. And then going through this process takes a lot of courage. It's a difficult process to put yourself through, but so much can be gained from that. And I think at the very least, as we said, being around people that love the sport, love the game, want to get better. So you create some great relationships. Being around some great coaches that also are in the same boat. All of our coaches that are involved with ODP, they're there to get better as well, and they're there to give back to the sport and to the kids. So you get to be around some great people in general, some great leaders. And then, I think with all of that being said, it's a growth opportunity. And that's what sport is all about. Far beyond Olympic gold medals or high school championships or, ODP championships. Sport is about growth and dealing with adversity. And this is an opportunity for you to grow in your own journey.
Last thing for you, there's going to invariably be some athletes that they go through this weekend and they leave kind of bummed out, right? They're a bit crestfallen on it. Didn't go the way they wanted to in the pool, and they didn't hear their name the way they wanted to, but they still love the sport and want to be a part of this. What's that message to kind of keep going that you give to kids that maybe it doesn't happen for them this time around the way they want, but they obviously have the future chances to keep playing?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one is that I can tell you story after story of of kids that have been cut along the way, or not been selected, I should say, along the way, that have gone on to be make our youth team, that didn't even make NTSC their first time around, and 4 years later made a youth team, or made NTSC in the 5th time that they tried out, right? That have been a part of the process. Kids that have not really made any of that, but have gone on to be great college players. I think the message for anything like this is just to keep coming back. If you love the sport, and you want to keep getting better, you get to control that part of your journey. And I think with ODP and these type of situations, especially as you're going through this from a young age, right? You're gonna continue to keep being a little better every time you do this, right? So it's like the first time you go to a camp, there's so many nerves and it's so difficult, and the next time it's a little bit easier, and then the next time it's a little bit easier. And so I think there's some familiarity with it as you go through the process. And I think just a reminder to just put everything you can into this and leave the weekend knowing that you put your best foot forward, and that you can't control the selections. You can't control that. That's out of your control. What you can control is how you react, how you act in the moment, how you carry yourself, and then how you react following that moment. And if you've got dreams to play on a national team, or to play in college, or further your career, well, then continue to chase those dreams and come back stronger and better the next time.
Good stuff. Ethan Damato, thanks for taking some time this week on a busy week, and good luck to you and the rest of the staff up in the Tri-Valley this weekend.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Greg. Appreciate you having me and all the work that you do for our sport.